All right, listen, this is not a drill, and Donald Trump is not joking. There were theories that he could be using the tariffs as a precursor to annexing Canada, and he's only reaffirming that because he is now saying that the only way to avoid economic devastation is to just join the USA, to become the 51st state. He's been floating this idea for a while, and while Trump supporters say that he's joking around about it, he's now trying to use the tariffs as leverage to actually make it happen. And it's like the Canadian people have witnessed something almost unthinkable over the past few weeks. The United States has gone from being their closest ally to their most unpredictable threat, from number one friend to number one enemy. And I'm not exaggerating, it's the reality when Donald Trump is using rhetoric like this. So I'd like to break down the implications. All that I ask is that you drop a like, subscribe, you can become a member below to help boost this video in the algorithm. And let's just jump over here. End wokeness. One of the largest right-wing Twitter accounts said, Canadians are now booing our national anthem. This is war. Conquest. Now. And it's in response to a video of Canadians, booing the national anthem at a hockey game because the US, which is supposed to be their number one ally, just tried to nuke their economy while also hurting Americans. It's like mutually assured destruction, and nobody quite knew what Donald Trump wanted because he kept making demands about the northern border, but all of his demands were complete BS. He was saying that there was a huge surge of fentanyl and illegal immigration going over the northern border. Number one, that is not true. Number two, Canada already took steps 3 weeks ago to make sure that Trump was happy, and he still placed the tariff. So people were wondering, what's the end game here? But now we know based off of Trump's recent tweets. Before we jump into Trump's tweets from early this morning, I just want to make sure we're not getting distracted by this when there's some important stuff going on domestically. Congressman Jerry Connolly tweeted this, quote, Elon Musk's hostile takeover of the Office of Personnel Management, sanctioned by Donald Trump, is putting Americans in danger. Since Trump handed Musk the keys to our government, it's been reported that Musk has set up private servers that risk a cybersecurity nightmare and sent out unsanctioned and untrustworthy resignation offers, locked career officials out of the agency systems, and more. That's just in the past few days. The actions of co-president Musk and Trump will have disastrous consequences, not just for the civil servants whose lives they are upending, but for the American people who will suffer as a result. Elon Musk has been going into some of our most important institutions and just gutting them from within, taking them over in a hostile way. And I've been making videos about this, but it's kind of been flying under the radar due to Donald Trump's tariff debacle. People are wondering, is Trump using the tariffs as a distraction for Elon Musk? No, these are both equally as important, and the distraction is when Donald Trump walks out and talks about DEI. They want us arguing about DEI and not about the implications of Trump's rhetoric and the implications of Elon Musk. But this video is about Canada, so let's break down what Donald Trump said earlier this morning, because one of the posts gets quite scary. The first post he made reads, "The tariff lobby, headed by the globalist and always wrong Wall Street Journal, is working hard to justify countries like Canada, Mexico, and China, and too many others, continuing to rip off America. Here's the thing, the US benefits greatly from our trade with Canada and Mexico, and even to an extent China. And yes, do we want to buy things from America? Of course, we want to build manufacturing plants and make sure that we can reshore manufacturing. But you don't do it like this. You give them a grace period to build new plants. You give companies time to prepare. Trump's goal has nothing to do with being ripped off. It has nothing to do with the border. And we'll point that out. But he then said, with regard to trade, crime, and poisonous drugs that are allowed to so freely flow into America, those days are over. He then says the USA has major deficits with Canada, Mexico, and China. He doesn't know the difference between a trade deficit and a budget deficit. People have been thinking that for a while, and he's only confirming it. Now, here's where he's straight up lying. Well, he's always straight up lying, but he then claims that number one, we're losing trillions. He also says that Canada is allowing a huge flow of drugs into our border. He's been saying that a lot, but I just want to say that is a complete lie. Let me pull up this article that reads, Trump calls Canada a big player in the fentanyl trade. Is it? President Trump has threatened to impose tariffs on Canada over drug trafficking, equating it with Mexico, but the U.S. government's own reports do not support the claim. And if I scroll down a little bit, we can actually see the numbers. How much Canadian fentanyl crosses into the U.S.? As the opioid epidemic rages in the United States, killing thousands, Congress in 2020 established a commission to look into ways to reduce the flow of drugs into the country. The commission found that, quote, Canada is not known to be a major source of fentanyl or other synthetic opioids or precursor chemicals for the United States, a conclusion primarily drawn from seizure data. Let me point out one more time before I read these stats. Trudeau already conceded 2 weeks ago, and he invested $1.3 billion into Canada's border, but Trump still went on with the tariffs because it's not about the border. This says, last year, U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents intercepted about 19 kilograms of fentanyl at the northern border. 19 kilograms of fentanyl at the northern border, compared with almost 9,600 kilograms at the border with Mexico, where cartels mass produce the drugs. That means Canada has let through a fraction of what Mexico has let through, yet Trump imposed equal tariffs on both countries after Canada already allocated more resources towards the border. I just needed to point that out because I think it's important. I think it's incredibly important that we know the facts and we're ready to combat these MAGA deplorables. They are deplorable. They're deplorable as hell. I've been debating with people on Twitter and they say, why doesn't Canada just secure their border? They have. They've done it multiple times. And before we read the Trump tweet that was really scary, where he talks about Canada being our 51st state, let me play this clip from Ronald Reagan, who I know is controversial, but he's describing Trump to a T. Take a listen to this clip.
Our peaceful trading partners are not our enemies. They are our allies. We should beware of the demagogues who are ready to declare a trade war against our friends, weakening our economy, our national security, and the entire free world, all while cynically waving the American flag. The expansion of the international economy is not a foreign invasion. It is an American triumph, one we worked hard to achieve, and something central to our vision of a peaceful and prosperous world of freedom. After the Second World War, America led the way to dismantle trade barriers and create a world trading system that set the stage for decades of unparalleled economic growth. Yes, back in 1776, our founding fathers believed that free trade was worth fighting for, and we can celebrate their victory, because today, trade is at the core of the alliance.
The dude is right, and it was actually really prescient because he called out Trump without actually calling out Trump. Now let's go on to the scary screenshot of today. And to build on what Ronald Reagan was saying, yes, our trading partners are not our enemies, but I really like when he brought up World War II, because after World War II, and I talk about this all the time, a bunch of world leaders came together to ensure the world never delved into chaos like that again. It was the bloodiest war ever, and they created a few different institutions or agencies, like NATO, for example. All of these countries came together, and we have seen an unparalleled period of prosperity and peace. And it may not seem like that with the Vietnam War and with the Middle East wars that the U.S. has gotten involved in, but you have to remember the amount of wars in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, even the early 1900s, there were 2 world wars. That was a different time when war was always constantly going. It was incredibly bloody and terrible. And yes, Russia invaded Ukraine. There are still wars going on today. Israel and Palestine are at war, but there has been an unprecedented period of economic growth and peace. And people always try to fight me when I say that we live in relatively the most peaceful time in America, or in world history, but it's true. These are the actual facts, but I digress. Let's read this tweet from Trump. He said, "We pay hundreds of billions of dollars to subsidize Canada. Already wrong. It's a mutually beneficial relationship." He then said, "Why? There is no reason. We don't need to buy anything they have." Wrong. It's almost embarrassingly wrong. He then said, "We have unlimited energy." Nope. "Should make our own cars." How? Is there a single American car manufacturer where it's all built domestically? These products are always imported. The pieces are always imported, even if they're built here. He then said, "And we have more lumber than we can ever use." Wrong. We benefit a lot from Canadian lumber. He then said, "Without this massive subsidy, Canada ceases to exist as a viable country." This is Putin-esque rhetoric. Putin was saying that Ukraine can't exist as a viable country without Russia's help, which was also wrong. That's why Ukraine was looking towards the West. But he then says, harsh but true. "Therefore, Canada should become our cherished 51st state. much lower taxes, and far better military protection for the people of Canada, and no tariffs. So again, he's using the tariffs as leverage to try to force Canada to become the 51st state, saying that we don't need anything from them, which is wrong. If we didn't need anything from them, then number one, we could have cut off lumber a while ago, but also, Canada is subsidizing stuff for us. When they send us crude oil, they subsidize it to lower gas prices. And as much as I want gas prices to be lowered, Canada's really got to strike back. They've got to smack Donald Trump across the face. And Trudeau gave a speech yesterday that I made a video about, but he said the tariffs don't come into effect for another 20 days. That's not enough. You gotta hit Donald Trump where it hurts. Surgically target red states. Make sure that stuff that Americans care about, like gas, is hit just temporarily until Donald Trump understands that you can't bully other countries and try to annex them. But it's incredibly concerning because everything he's saying is a lie, and he's using it as a precursor to try to take over one of our biggest partners. And here's the thing. Here's what he does. Trump has a history of floating super extreme ideas to just gauge the public reaction. And he did that with the Canada thing multiple times. He did it first at Mar-a-Lago to Trudeau's face, then he did it in a speech, but now he's not joking anymore, because usually if the backlash is fierce enough, he'll be like, oh, it's just a joke, I was just joking around. But if he senses any support from Republicans, if he senses any support from his base, he doubles down, and that's what he's doing here. It's not a joke anymore. It is a calculated move to see how far he can push the envelope, and it's rooted in his broader agenda of alienating allies, undermining global cooperation, undermining the same institutions that have kept us safe since World War II, our trade agreements, stuff like NATO, and just stirring nationalist fervor at home. What Ronald Reagan says here is so true, because he says, essentially, they'll act like they're being patriots. They'll act like it's for America, but all the while, they're turning our allies into our enemies. So, really quickly, just to wrap this up, Trump's claim that the U.S. pays hundreds of billions of dollars to subsidize Canada is flat out false. It's mutually beneficial. It's driven by balanced trade and shared economic interests. Canada is not some dependent nation just propped up by America. In fact, the U.S. runs a trade surplus with Canada when services and energy exports are considered. So the idea that Canada just ceases to exist without the United States is a delusion, but it's also a delusion with dangerous implications. And by framing Canada as a drain on American resources and a potential target for annexation, Trump is eroding the foundations that have brought us this far. But I'll talk about that later. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe. Have a great rest of your day. Love you guys, and peace out.